Welcome Supers, today we are going to be ranking every single one cost here in Marvel Snap. We have cards that are already available for your collections and ones that have been leaked but not yet released that we're going to throw up on the tier list as well. With only 12 cards in a deck, you have absolutely zero space for fluff. You need to know that every single card that you place into a deck is going to be able to pull its weight. So let's break down our rankings. You can check the timestamps down below if you're interested in a specific set of cards. We're going to be moving fast. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to briefly break down the cards' mechanics and then talk about their important combos and ultimately place them up here onto the tier list. To begin with, we actually have a set of 3 cards that are free. They are 0 cost, and we're going to be lumping them in with the 1 cost compatriots. Then when we do the tier list for the 6 cost cards, we will bring in the anomaly 9 cost card over there as well. Our first card here, Yellowjacket, 0 energy, 2 strength, with a negative on reveal ability. Afflict your other cards at this location with -1 power. While there are of course ways to be able to mitigate the negative impact of this ability, it cripples the flexibility of the card, and I value that a lot. So we're going to dumpster this guy, put him down into the D tier. I don't see a situation where I'm going to play him, and because your board space is so limited, even though you're getting a 2 strength body for free, I'm not that excited about it. Next, we have Wasp. It's not an ability here. This is just flavor text. She has no ability. She's just a free 1 strength body. She's there to be able to absorb area of effect buffs or act as a force multiplier for cards that want to have a lot of allies. I like her quite a bit more than Yellowjacket because she does provide a little bit of flexibility, and there are archetype decks right now that are trying to spam out a lot of low-cost bodies and then hit them with large buffs, so we're going to put her into the C tier. Next is Makkari. When you draw this, play it at a random location. And I think this is back to being terrible because you have such limited board space. The card entering a random location can seriously mess up your entire game plan, cutting you out of being able to combo on an additional card that you wanted to be able to play. I don't like Makkari. Now we've got our first 1 cost 0 on reveal. Remove the abilities on the next card you play. He is a 1/3, which honestly is a premium stat line for a 1 drop. And this ability combos beautifully with a number of cards that have negative abilities just like Yellowjacket. But obviously we want to be able to play him with a more impactful card, something with an amazing stat line, but otherwise a crippling ongoing ability. 0 here is going to wind up in the B tier. Let me know in the comments if you guys have a deck that really sings with 0. I feel like he's being held back because he has to combo with something either with a negligible ability or a -1, and that can really clutter up your hand, because if you're in a situation where you want to play him but then he's going to take away a positive ability from one of your other cards, it's just a terrible situation. Next up, we have Yondu. This guy is absolutely everywhere on the ranked ladder right now. Incredibly popular card. On reveal, remove the top card of your opponent's deck. His goal is to be able to break part of your opponent's key combos and also give you information about what type of deck they are playing early on. The top decks right now have key combos they're trying to hit, and if they miss a single card out of those combos, they lose a ton of power. And so Yondu informing you that they are missing part of an important combo, especially with the snap mechanics that are in the game, can allow you to press for early cubes and be able to get more out of your opponent, maybe even force an early concession if you hit, say, their Nova out of the prize, top of the meta, Nova Carnage, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur combo. Also, if you happen to hit a key counterplay card, say an Enchantress, then you know that you can go wild with your Devil Dinosaur play. So we're putting Yondu up into the A tier. He certainly deserves it, and absolute plug and play viability. If you have an open slot in one of your decks, trying to figure out what you want to slot in there, Yondu, as long as you're still looking for some early energy curve cards, he's going to do incredibly well for you. Next up is a Yo-Yo, currently unreleased. When this card moves, move it back with +1 power. This card clearly fits into the Heimdall movement deck, which is a decent deck right now. This could be an excellent addition to it on the early side of the curve. You can expect, well, you would hope to be able to move it twice. Once with Cloak, I suppose, and then once again with Heimdall, which would take it up to a 1/4 stat line. That is a premium stat line for a 1 drop. And if they find other cards that will give them additional ways to be able to bounce cards around, Yo-Yo could get even more powerful. We're going to put Yo-Yo into the B tier. Interested in seeing how the movement deck evolves as more cards come into that space. Next up, we have Uncle Ben. When this card is destroyed, add Spider-Man to your hand. This is also an unreleased card, and I'm really struggling figuring out where he's going to end up finding a home. Spider-Man, once you play him, your opponent cannot play to the same location on their next turn. So, very pivotal cards. The thing here is that I don't see Uncle Ben meshing with the current self-destruction archetype, and that deck is pretty strapped for free spaces. They don't have a lot of those. So while I love the style of this card, an early drop that will then guarantee drawing into a more powerful mid to late game card, I don't know how well Uncle Ben himself is going to perform. I'm going to put him into the C tier right now. I feel like he's right on the edge. He's very close to B tier. We'll see where he ends up settling. There is also, and I think this is also very interesting, threads of a deck that is not on ranked at all right now, but comprised of a lot of cards that generate new cards. Card draw right now is very powerful, and then just a few engine pieces to be able to make these created cards cheaper and more powerful could bring that deck into a viable position. Next, we have the Watcher. Once this is in your hand, you can see the unrevealed locations. Knowing information about the locations ahead of time is incredibly useful. There's a ton of them that if you're able to play around them a little earlier can give you a significant advantage. The thing is, there's going to be so many games where he's worth nothing because he doesn't appear in your opening hand. He only comes in after the locations have been revealed. So we're going to drop him down to D tier. If his ability said that he gave you this advanced information and was guaranteed to appear in your opening hand, then we'd throw him all the way up in the A tier. But as it is, there's going to be the majority of games where he does nothing for you, and I don't recommend using him. Now let's look at Titania, another unreleased card. When any card is played at this location, this card switches sides. So there's a tug of war for the loyalties of Titania. And it becomes this little mini game if you play her earlier, if she's going to end up on your side or end up on your opponent's side. At 1/5, she is a meaningful point swing for a location. Obviously, if you play her later on, you can orchestrate a situation where your opponent's side of the board is already all locked up, so she's guaranteed to fight for you. I think that this is bad. I don't like the extra mental strain of having to puzzle out getting Titania to end up on my side, and I don't like cards where my opponent is able to influence the outcome of where they go. So we're going to put her down into the C tier, but if you think that you would enjoy the mini game of pulling her back and forth, if you think that you can orchestrate winning this, or you just think that it's funny, I definitely recommend picking her up once she releases. The Hood. On reveal, add a demon to your hand. This card, I love it so much. So the base Hood is 1 energy, -2 strength. Then the demon that you receive is 1 energy, 6 strength. And I think that the opportunities this card offers are amazing. The 1/6 stat line is insane, and the 1-2 stat line, there's things that you can work around it. You can either play it in the self-destruction deck where, say, you're feeding it to the Carnage, so Carnage gets stronger and then the -2 is completely eliminated. Or with Viper, you hand it off to the opponent's side. You're getting these 2 cheap bodies that could absorb area of effect buffs. There's so much to be able to do with this card. I love the concept of it. We're putting it up into A tier with a caveat that is completely different from Yondu. There is no plug and play. Yondu has the plug and play viability. The Hood has to be in a deck that is ready to utilize his unique situation of the multiple bodies and the negative strength on one of them. Now for Sunspot, another incredibly popular card right now. At the end of each turn, gain +1 power for each unspent energy. This card just allows you to have such an efficient curve of your energy that is desirable in almost any deck, very plug and play. Over the course of the game, I would actually be interested in the stats, what the average energy waste is. Sunspot's going to mop up all of that. I am sure that it's at least 2, maybe 3, depending on how you have curved your deck as well. If you're running a lot of low-cost cards, it's easier to play efficient, but Sunspot is going to be able to then hit quite easily a stat line of 1/3 or 1/4, which is an upper end for the 1-drops. Very popular right now. The thing is that I've never seen him really be outstanding. He's right on the edge for me between A and B because he's so flexible. If you're looking for an open spot, I've said this for a couple cards already, Sunspot is right up there for your attention, but I'm going to put him into B tier just because that energy generation, the power generation off of energy is so inefficient, and I've never really seen him be a standout piece, but then again, as a 1-drop, he doesn't have to be. So solid card, B tier, nothing to sneer at. Squirrel Girl is up next. On reveal, add a 1 power squirrel to each other location. Important to notice that the squirrels are also considered 1 cost cards, so there's a number of cards that interact with 1 cost cards. It can be killed by Elektra, it can be killed by Killmonger, it can receive buffs from Khazar. This is one of the best ways to be able to spread out bodies all across the board. Synergize with area of effect buffs. You get her very early and you can continue to enjoy playing her for a long time. We're going to put her up into B tier because she is held back by needing to spread out across all of the locations, and some of the locations can heavily penalize getting the squirrel in there. If you put the squirrel onto, say, the Space Throne or Atlantis, you're very sorry, but those games are certainly in the minority. Overall, if your deck is able to utilize having a lot of bodies on the board, you're going to be happy to play Squirrel Girl. Now we've got Snowguard. If you have not played this by turn 3, transform into a random spirit animal. Oh boy, I'm kind of glad this is currently unreleased because it means it's a good chance that it gets changed before it's released. At least I hope so, because these are so bad. Look at the stat lines on these spirit animals it could transform into. 5/3, are you kidding me? Also, why do I want my 1-drop to turn into a more expensive card later on in the game? I want it to be able to combo with other cards for later turns, playing multiple cards together. And I don't see this card being any good. We're putting it down into D tier. Now, similar to Old Ben, for the deck that is able to empower generated cards that don't start in your deck, they have a few that synergize with this. Snowguard would play into that technically, but let's take another look at this. Even if we discount these Snowguard spirit animals by 1, obviously up here the 4/8 turning into a 3/8 is awesome, and the 2/4 is playable, but that the 4/3 is bad. I still don't see it being very good. D tier for Snowguard. Now, Silver Samurai. When this is discarded from your hand, draw a card. This card is brilliant. It allows you to cycle the deck for the self-discard deck, which is a decent deck right now, and being able to get extra card draw on that deck, I think it's exactly what it wants. We're going to throw Silver Samurai up into the A tier. When it releases, maybe it'll be able to open up the meta a little bit. Maybe that's the juice that the self-discard archetype right now needs to be able to come up and finally challenge the self-discard. The current hotness in the MCU, Scarlet Witch, on reveal, replaced this location with a random new one. This is a very high skill expression card. You as a player need to be able to quickly understand if a location is giving more help to you or to your opponent. It can help flip some really sticky locations that are working contrary to your deck. Maybe you get surprised by one that reveals you already had cards there, and this will help you bail you out. The thing is that because it just replaces the location with a random new one, you're not guaranteed that the new location is going to help you any more than the previous one. I'm putting her into the B tier. I think that in the vast majority of games, locations are affecting both decks the same, and just slightly changing up how you play around the locations is better than playing Scarlet Witch. The better is the evil that you know than the evil that you don't, is what I say. Rocket Raccoon, incredible animation and some of the best alternate art in the game, period. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, +2 power. This is the archetype mechanic of all of the Guardian of the Galaxy cards. You're trying to simultaneously play to the same location as your opponent, and you get a bonus from doing so. Rocket is going to be absolutely everywhere in the first couple weeks of play as you're expanding your collection. Extremely popular card. I think that he certainly falls off later on. You're going to find better 1 costs to be able to slot in with Rocket that synergize better with archetypes for your decks. And Rocket is kind of off on his own, trying to be the 1/4, and you have to be able to gamble to be able to get that upside. So we're putting him into the B tier. Quinjet. We've already made some allusions to the Quinjet deck. Ongoing cards that did not start in your deck cost 1 less. Being able to discount cards completely flips the script on how good they are. So this is an insanely powerful engine card as long as you have a deck that is going to be generating these cards that don't start in your deck. Also, this alternate art, man, I can get behind more cards that look like this. Yes, I occasionally listen to Disturbed and New Metal. Why do you guys ask? We're going to throw Quinjet over into the B tier, and if the deck appears that is all about generating these new cards, I could see Quinjet going up into A tier. He just needs more cards around him, and that style of deck is going to need some other engine card rather than only relying on Quinjet to be good. Because if that's the one thing holding it together and you don't draw it, you're dead, and then the deck will never make it into the meta. Next up is Quicksiler. Starts in your opening hand, starts in your opener deck. Quicksiler is great. He allows you to be incredibly efficient with your energy, gives you that early tempo, and you can play him for quite a long time and be very happy with it. He will eventually, similar to Rocket, get edged out by better cards that you can run into your deck, so we're going to put him into the B tier. If you guys are enjoying the video and want to support the channel, you can leave a like down below, and if you're interested in the tier list for all the other cost categories, we're going to be releasing all of them. You can subscribe to the channel to see as soon as those drop. Up next, we have the big boy. Oh, Nova. When this is destroyed, give your cards +2 power. The developers with this card asked, what if we put the effect of a 6-drop on a 1-cost body? Oh, it's at the top of the meta. It's the best card in the game. It's arguably the best card in the game. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think is the actual best card in the game? Nova is mind-blowingly overpowered. S tier, double S, triple S. He is on the point where if they cut his ability in half, if he gave your other cards +1 power, I would still say he's A tier. He's probably still S tier. And that just shows you how far and away above everything Nova is. Nova Carnage is the deck to play right now on ladder. If you guys have not done it yet, Nova, Carnage, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur, play it. Newverse has not yet set the precedent of how they're going to balance the game, if they're going to just introduce new cards, and if they do, and they're going to try and introduce new cards that are going to shake up the meta and top this current deck, oh, we're going to see some insane power creep. Hopefully they're okay with giving nerfs and other balance changes to cards. I want to give Nova the respect he deserves as head and shoulders above all the other 1-drops, and talk a little bit about how he could be brought into line. There's a lot of different creative options that they have. You can hit his cost. Right now he combos most often with Carnage, which is just a 2-drop. That makes the whole combo only 3 energy to potentially provide +2 to every card on your board, which is just insane. Increasing the cost would quickly bring him into line, making it much harder to combo together. You could also hit the 2 strength, bring him down to a negative strength himself, so that if he gets caught on the board and the opponent is not able to destroy him, then he's actually hurting them. That could bring him into line, but it's fairly easy to play him immediately with the card that will destroy him. You can also just tone down the power gain over here, but I think the most creative and potentially my favorite option at balancing him would be to rework what he does. I like the mechanic and I like the potential of an enormous power swing coming out of Nova. But what if he said, when destroyed, give 2 cards +2 power, and it will affect 1 more card every turn it's on the board. Yeah, it's like some kind of ongoing effect. Ongoing affects 1 more card every turn it's on the board. This means that if you play it on the same turn that you destroy it with Carnage, it's still feeding Carnage, and it's still giving 4 stats to your entire board, albeit randomly, which is pretty good for a 1-drop. But then, if you leave it on the board multiple turns, you can start to see power swings that he currently has. It just leaves him more vulnerable to counterplay with either Cosmo or Armor, which right now people are running just kind of because they have to. On the offhand chance they're able to block the Nova play, they win. But if he was just a little bit more vulnerable to that counterplay, I think that the deck comes back into line with the rest of the meta. Once again, S tier. Now I'm tired of talking about Nova. Let's move on. Nightcrawler. You can move this once. Amazingly flexible card. The interesting thing here is that it seems like he would connect to the Heimdall movement deck but he really doesn't. I don't play him in my Heimdall movement deck, and I think he does fine. What he is just independent flexibility. He lets you get into a whole set of locations that you normally can't play into, either because they'll destroy cards or you're just not allowed. You're blocked from being able to get into those locations. And so this flexibility helps out a lot. I'm putting him into the A tier here. I think that he does count for a lot. He also synergizes with Angela, one of the best 2-drops right now, who gains power every time a card is played to her location. You can play him, move him away, play more cards to Angela's location to make her even more powerful. He doesn't need synergies with the other deck, the rest of the deck, to be powerful, so we're going to put him into the A tier. Great plug-and-play card if you have an open slot. Now we have Nebula, unreleased Guardians of the Galaxy card. She has her own unique twist to the Guardians style. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, double her power and put this in your hand. Now there is the potential to generate an enormous card here. Nebula is certainly a powerful engine card. I just don't think she is strong enough right now to be worth playing. We're putting her down into the C tier. She really needs a buff prior to doubling to be worth it, because if you hit the opponent and you double and it comes back to hand and then you play her and you hit again, this is like an incredibly lucky situation. And then she comes back and then you play her, she's going to be a 4 strength that you spent 3 energy to be able to get. That's terrible efficiency. If you're able to put a few buffs on her and then she starts doubling, she gets stronger. But then if you keep on getting lucky and on the final turn of the game hit where your opponent played, she'd come back to hand and be worth nothing. So I really think that for her to be worth it, she needs to be brought up to start at 2 strength, just because you're not guaranteed to be able to amp her up. And even if you do, you're investing a lot of energy to be able to get her to a place where she's powerful. C tier. Misty Knight. Oh no, we gotta save this city. We gotta save this card. This card dares to ask the question, what if in a game about all these superhero cards, you played a card that was just a girl? And the answer happens to be D tier. I feel sorry for anybody who is a Misty Knight fan out there. They did her dirty. I mean, she's in competition for the worst card in the game. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think the worst card in the game actually is? Now, Mantis. Also a twist on the Guardians formula. All the other Guardians just gain power based on matching simultaneous play to your opponent. Here on reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, draw a card from their deck. This is what we saw Yondu doing, but you are actually getting the card, so it's better than just destroying the card. It is harder to be able to trigger because you have to simultaneously match the play of your opponent, and because of this unreliability of the Mantis play, we're going to put her down into the B tier. If you are really good at lining up with your opponent, then Mantis can be even more valuable. Maybe bring her up into A, but I think that she's just too inconsistent to be all the way up at A tier, and she ends up getting edged out by these other more powerful 1-drops. M'Baku. If this is in your deck after the final turn, it jumps to a random location. Oh boy, who thought this was a good idea? This is so garbage. You're getting a free 2 strength in a random space in 1 in 4, 1 in 5 games, because you're left with 3 cards in deck on a normal game, and then for M'Baku to be one of those, it happens so infrequently. They could have at least said if it was in deck or in hand, it would randomly go to a location. We already said that Makkari was D tier for just being a 2-strength body for free going to a random location. M'Baku is worse. And so yeah, the D tier, maybe they'll change him, maybe he'll just always be terrible. On reveal, shuffle a rock into your opponent's deck. We have Korg here. Now, the rock drawing, the opponent drawing a rock makes them pretty sad. But it really doesn't affect them that badly, and it won't affect them all the time. There's plenty of times where they won't draw the rock at all. We're going to put Korg into C tier. There is another card that's going to put even more rocks into the opponent's deck, There could be eventually an archetype where you just try and fill their entire hand with junk, but Korg is not doing a lot here. Now, Kitty Pryde, you can pull this back to your hand at any time. Before we touch on this ability, Kitty Pryde comic readers out there, there's a dragon in both of the alternate arts and not in the generic art. Are they just doing the dragon dirty? Am I missing something? I feel like something of the character, if he's here at her wedding day, he should be in the other card. Anyway, Kitty Pryde right now doesn't have a home. The effect is very interesting, being able to recall her and continually play her. If we get a second card that has the exact same trigger as Angela, being able to gain strength based on allies being played to their location, then I think Kitty Pryde is good. But for right now, with only Angela really being able to benefit from her, we're not going to play her. Now we have Iron Fist. On reveal, move the next card you play one location to the left after it reveals. This is an essential card for the movement deck archetype. It functions very well there, but it really does nothing in any other deck. We're putting it into the B tier. Now, Iceman. On reveal, give a random card in your opponent's hand +1 cost to a maximum of 6. It means you're not going to be able to lock them out of playing their big 6 cost finisher. This is fine. It's still amazing. I've had so many games get completely thrown off based on an opponent's Iceman increase the cost of a key combo card for me. I think this card is great. Plug and play into any type of deck if you have an open slot. We're going A tier. Maybe I'm a little biased from these times that I've gotten burned, but I think he is fantastic. Speaking of getting burned, Human Torch. When this moves, double its power. This is an excellent card for the movement deck archetype. It can scale based on 2 factors. You either try and move it a lot to be able to amp it up, or you try and buff it and then start moving it, which is the exact same principle as Multiple Man, a card that they're already trying to use. And so here it gives the movement deck just another carry card to more reliably be able to connect the synergies between its cards. I think that Human Torch is going to be absolutely fantastic for it. Also bringing Human Torch up into the A tier. Next up, we have Hawkeye. On reveal, if you play a card here next turn, +2 power. It's a starter card. It's pretty bad. That's all I have to say about Hawkeye. Moving on. Elsa Bloodstone. You know what? Never mind. I have something more to say about Hawkeye. In the very early game, everybody's playing Hawkeye because it's part of the starter, and everybody is playing Star-Lord because he's also part of the starter. And you get this silly mind game where you play Hawkeye, and then your opponent knows that you want to follow up, so they're going to play Star-Lord. So you play Star-Lord, and then both the Star-Lords hit each other, and it's just kind of silly. I don't know if that was even worth it. Back onto Elsa. I think Elsa, she's unreleased right now, looks awesome, and I can't wait to be able to really test her out. At the end of each turn, if you are winning this location, +1 power. So she's a bit of an engine card. If she wins for 2 turns to be able to get up to a 1-3, that's a good stat line. If she wins 3 turns to be able to get up to 1-4, that's great, and anything over that is just incredible. So very flexible card. She needs to be in a deck that's going to favor early tempo to be able to get her to a situation where she's on a winning location. I think she's in the B tier right now. But yeah, cannot wait to be able to play with her. Up next, we have Elektra. On reveal, destroy a random enemy 1-cost card at this location. This translates to Elektra is 1 strength better than whatever your opponent played, which turns out is really good. Also, Elektra is able to kill 1-drops. Often if your opponent's playing a lot of 1-drops, they're trying to buff them up. So you can take away cards that are looking to receive buffs. You could kill a Nova before your opponent really has their board set up to maximize the benefit from that buff. I've seen nasty shenanigans with Elektra playing around Mojo World, where you're able to take away that card so that then you outnumber your opponent on the final turn and get +100. Elektra is amazing. A tier for her. Also easy to plug and play into almost any deck if you have an open spot. And when there are other 1-drops that are like Nova, that are like the demon from the hood, that are able to hold a lot of strength, Elektra gets even better. So I think that she's going to be an evergreen good card. Now we have Ebony Maw. Honestly, the perfect nemesis for Elektra, a 1/6, an insane stat line for a 1 cost with a crippling ability. You cannot play this card after turn 3 and ongoing. You can't play cards to this location. Oh man, so he's an absolute brick in your hand if you draw him after turn 3 and he locks you out of playing to the location. D tier. This guy is so bad. The only creative thing that I've seen is I saw an opponent trying to play him in the movement deck, because then you're able to still move cards into the location, you just can't play there. So you're able to kind of mitigate the negative side of his ability, and then you're able to utilize the incredible stat line of being a 1/6, but that doesn't help the fact that he is an absolute brick in your hand after turn 3, and it's still a nightmare to be able to plan your motions out when you're completely locked out of a specific region. So I think Ebony Maw is terrible. Next up, Deadpool, one of the most popular Marvel heroes, period. When this is destroyed, return it to your hand with double the power. An engine card for the self-destruction archetype. The self-destruction deck is doing very well right now, but I think it's doing so well that it's honestly squeezing Deadpool out of being able to fit in. We're going to put Deadpool into the B tier right now. What's holding him back is that he really needs to receive buffs before being destroyed to be able to kickstart his scaling. And so the ideal combo would be that you have Nova, Deadpool, and then Carnage in that order, so that Carnage kills Nova, buffs Deadpool, kills Deadpool, he goes to your hand, he's buffed, he's a 1/6 in your hand after that. Then you feed him to a Venom, and then he comes back to your hand as a 1/12. That's the dream scenario, but right now, the self-destruction archetype really just wants to spam out bodies all over the board, pop Nova, propagate the buffs, and that's it. Deadpool doesn't necessarily fit into that game plan, but if they choose to nerf the Carnage-Nova combo, then I could see Deadpool filling in the spot as an engine card for that archetype. Next up, Darkhawk. You can only play this at locations where you already have a card. Terrible ability. I want my 1-drops to be able to pioneer the way in the early game, to be able to get tempo early. It has 3 strength, which is a good stat line, but is just crippled by this ability. It has to be played later on in the game, and I want my 1-drops to be a potential turn 1 play. Next up, we have Bullseye. On reveal, the next card you draw will be a 2-cost card, if any are left. This opens up some very interesting deck building opportunities. I just don't see a deck right now that needs a 2-cost card so bad that you would play Bullseye to make sure you draw into it. Let me know in the comments. Maybe you guys can theory craft a deck that has a key, maybe 1 or 2 key 2 costs that are so important that you would play Bullseye to make sure that you're able to get into them. We're getting close to the end of our tier list here, and of course, let me know down in the comments if you guys think a card is being grossly misrepresented, how you would shift around the tier list, and if there's a card that I happen to miss. But let's keep on going here. We have Blade. On reveal, discard a card from your hand, 1/3 stat line. This card is amazing. It plays beautifully into the self-discard archetype, which right now is a decent deck. It's hovering right underneath the dreaded Nova Carnage, Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur shenanigans that are going on right now. I think Blade, A tier, easy. Next is Black Knight. When this is destroyed, draw a card. It's just like Silver Samurai was for the discard deck, but this one for the self-destruction deck. I think that's fantastic. Being able to get that little bit of extra card draw to make sure you're able to pull off your combos. Black Knight also dropping into the A tier. Now we're looking at Ant-Man. Ongoing, if you have 3 other cards here, plus 3 power. The 1/4 stat line is good. He can very reliably get to there as long as you're running 2 or 3 other cards that will put out multiple bodies. You'll very reliably hit maxed out locations. He can be negated by Enchantress, but he can also be buffed by, say, Onslaught and Spectrum. B tier for Ant-Man. Next up is Angel. When one of your cards is destroyed, this flies out of your deck to replace it. It's a way to be able to thin the deck in the self-destruction archetype. Really fantastic when you're able to combo it and you're able, just being able to chomp down on the Nova, buff everything, pull the Angel out of the deck, all coming together is amazing. Now, in most of my games that I've played with the deck, I've ended up drawing into Angel, but I still think that the upside of him flying out of the deck is good enough to be able to run. Maybe he'll get squeezed out eventually. Right now I'm putting him into the B tier. Finally, we have Agent 13. On reveal, add a random card to your hand, synergizing with the Quinjet style of creating cards. Right now, just having cards in hand is very powerful with how strong Devil Dinosaur and Collector are. Those are some of the most powerful cards in the game. Agent 13 is going to make them even more powerful. She's a fantastic card. We're dropping her right into the A tier. And this is the finalized tier list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Have I gotten things right? One costs are in a very interesting position right now in Marvel Snap because they are often the most effective way to be able to get power, the most efficient way to be able to get power based on how much energy you are spending to be able to get it. But with limited space in deck, limited card draw, and limited space on board, you have to be careful how many of these little guys you're going to run. Stay tuned to the channel because 2 drops are next and they have some of the most powerful engine cards in the entire game. Until next time, thank you guys for watching and have a good one.